Now that we've set up our database, let's use the controller to go in and grab data from the database that we can then use on the front end side of our app. So rather than reuse this weather forecast controller, I'm actually going to go in and build a new controller. So a new controller, but which kind? Does it give me which? Let's do this. Let's go and add new item, and I want an API controller. And so API controller. Now it does have API controller with read-write actions, tempting to use. I'm going to do it empty from the beginning. And then I'm going to call this my food controller. All right, so the name of this is important because it's going to, in fact, maybe I'll just to make it more specific, Marriott Food Controller .cs. This is going to be the thing that we type in the website to get is the name of this, whatever we've named it. And so we want to make sure to name it appropriately for what we want the API to be calling. And so I'm going to say add controller, and it goes and puts in just this little snippet of code. It tells it it's going to be an API controller, and that the route to get here is going to be API and then the name of the controller, right? Without the controller part on it. And then it inherits from the controller base. All right. So what I'm going to do here then is just kind of compare the two. So I'm going to get the weather forecast controller up and see what I need to bring in or not bring in. Now I've noticed here, again, we don't need anything to do with this, the weather. I'm not using an iLogger currently, so we don't need to worry about that. But I do want to have my constructor because I want to be able to pull in that repo that we've created. So I'll come in here and create a constructor. And so public, name of the controller, right there it is. And so then I'm going to say, when you build this, build me an instance of the generic iFood repository that I'll refer to as something, again, just temp or something. And then what I'm going to do when I get that is build an instance of this repository. So again, I'll build a private iFood repository that I can refer to as whatever I want to. So maybe I call it food repository. And I can't remember what the significance is of this underscore. Let me look it up. Oh, and I did know that. It just makes it's indicating it's a private variable. So it's a way for us to, as we're typing a bunch of code, determine what's private and what's public. All right, so that private iFood repository, and then we put on there our getters and setters. So get, set, and then we're good there. In fact, I'm not sure we've done getters and setters. I think we just did the semicolon. And then down here, we're going to say set the underscore food repository equal to temp. So now our database is connected into this controller. We can use it, the food repository, wherever we want to in this controller. And so we're good there. All right, back to comparing what the weather forecast is doing. Well, then it has a HTTP GET with the name get weather forecast. And so, and then it sets up again an IEnumerable of type weather forecast with a get method. So I'm going to set up a get method as well. So I'll say public, and then what it's going to return is an IEnumerable of type Marriott Food, and the name of the method is going to be get. Okay, so nothing passed in to be able to get this, and it's going to not like that because I'm not returning a value yet. But up here, I can put that annotation on saying this is the HTTP GET of this method. I don't know that we necessarily need to put in, well, let's try it without this, get weather forecast, and we'll do that in a little bit. Okay, so then what is this going to get? What are we going to return out of this method? So I'm going to take, in this case, and say return, well, and we can do it separately like we've done. We can say create a var of called the food data is going to be equal to our underscore food repository dot name of the table. So name, not even the name of the table, but the name of the method that we created in here, which is called foods, not method, but this object is called foods. So I can come in here and say, go out to the foods table, and I want to take and make this into an array. So to array, let's take and force that into an array, and then what I will return out of here is the food data that I just created. Now again, I could just return straight out of the, I could just put that right there and return straight out of that statement if I wanted to, but typically we want our returns to be really simple, and ideally one return in the end is, in my estimation, the best way of programming. Okay, so I've done this. Let's see if it actually does anything. So I create and run this database, or this app, this API. All right, so it pulls up this initial app. Again, if I come in here and I say go to the weather forecast, it'll go pull up that information. But if I follow this pattern of saying go out to the name of the controller, well, this controller's name is Marriott Food, and it's not going to work, I think, because I need to have this API on there, API/Marriott Food, and sure enough, it goes and does something. Now, as it turns out, there's no data in the database, and so maybe we ought to go put something in there to see if this actually works. And so let's go out to the Solution Explorer. I'm going to leave it running and go out to the Solution Explorer. Well, maybe I won't like it. Let's go ahead and stop it. I'll stop it. I'm going to open up my database. Of course, there's nothing in there yet, so I'm going to go out to the Browse Data, into the Foods table, nothing there, so I'm going to click on the Add Record here. And let's just put in, so the event name, you know, a great one every year, AIS Gala. We've done Chick-fil-A. Now, Chick-fil-A is funny because I've been torn on that. I didn't used to ever go there because it was so expensive, and that. My wife really likes it though. So we've started going to Chick-fil-A, and it's pretty dang tasty. So there's lots of events. If it's a Chick-fil-A event, I mean, what's the food rating on that? You know, it's solid. Let's say it's a 7. I don't know. Comparing all food, I do like good food. So let's say it's good. It's tasty. So 7, okay? And then let's make another entry. Let's say that there's a, whatever, something info session. And they're providing JDogs, also an excellent choice. Maybe even a little bit better or more unique, an 8 or something. I'm making stuff up here. If you don't agree with me, that's okay. You can put your own information in. Okay, and then you go to something and they've got like the, you go to a study abroad meeting. This is what I have in my head. A broad meeting. And they've got some, you go in, they got some, those little like Apple Spice Junction or whatever it's called, like the little sandwiches, and you're not quite as enthused about that. That's maybe like a 5. Okay. So we've got some data in there. Let's go ahead and we don't really save the database, but close the database. Do I want to save the changes? I guess, yeah. Okay. So now let's run this again. And we'll go out, I'll type in here, API, Marriott Food, and sure enough, what's generated from this API, so what's happening in my controller here, is I'm providing a JSON object, JSON data. So each one of these ends up being a record in the database. I'm taking this data and passing it out, and what I'm really doing is making it available for somebody to come call and grab that data. And so that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go into React and we're going to go consume this data. We call it using React. It's getting exciting. Spencer out.